Hi everyone, welcome to GTCoding. In this video, we will design this custom select box using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. So let's get started. Now we are not going to be using the select tag in HTML to build the select box. That is because we have very limited options to style the select tag, and especially the option tags are very hard to style. I had designed a select box using just the select tag and option tags in HTML, and this is the one that I designed. And we can do some customizations for the select tag, but when it comes to the option tags, we don't have much options. We can just change the background color, the font size and the font color, and we don't have any other options. So this is all controlled by the browser. So every browser has a different way of displaying the options. So what we'll do is we will not use the select tag in HTML, but instead we will use radio buttons to design our select box, and we can style it to our heart's content. And in the next video, I will show you how to add a search box over here. So when we open this, we will have a search box, and we can search for whatever we want over here, and the list will be filtered, and we can then select the options. So let's get started. I have this project opened over here, and I have a folder called img, and in that I have an svg for the down arrow that we have over here. So let's start by creating our files. So first of all, we'll create a new file called index.html, and then we'll create a new file called style.css, and we also need to add some JavaScript, so we'll create a JavaScript file. Alright, so we'll start with the index.html file, and in VS Code you can just type exclamation and press tab, and you'll get this HTML file boilerplate. We'll have a division called container to contain everything, and in that we will have the h2. So we'll type video category over here, and let's open this with live server. Next we'll have a division to show the selected item. So let's create a division with a class of selected, and initially we want to have select video category displayed over here. Then we'll create a division called select dash box, and in that we'll create a division called options container, and in that we'll have the different options. So we'll create a division with the class of option, and here we'll have an input with a type of radio, and we'll also give it a class of radio, and for the ID we will type automobiles. So this is the first option, and we should have the same name for all the radio buttons so that only one of them will be selected at once. So we'll type name equals category, and then we need to have a label. So the label will be for automobiles, and here we will type automobiles. So here is our first option. Now I'll just speed up the process of creating all the other options. Alright, we have created all our options. Now we need to place this selected division inside the options container. So I'll just cut this from here and paste it over here. Now let's link our style.css file, and we'll also add the JavaScript before the body ends. Now let's go to the style.css file, and we'll start styling our select box. So first of all, we will have a universal selector, and we'll type margin 0 and box sizing of border box, and then for the body we will give a font family of Roboto and sans serif, and we'll also give a background of F7, F6, FF, And then we'll style the h2, and for that we will give a margin of 16 pixels. Now we'll style the container, and we'll give a margin top of 100 pixels and a padding of 32 pixels. And then we'll style the select box, and we'll set the display to flex and a width of 400 pixels. Now we'll style the options container inside the select box, and for that we'll give a background color of 2F3640 and the color of the text to F5, F6, FA, and we have to set the max height of this options container to 0, so that it will start from 0 and then it will expand to this height over here. But right now if we apply this style, then we cannot see our options container, so we'll just comment it for now. And then we'll give it a width of 100%, and we also need to set the opacity to 0 initially, but we'll comment this as well. And then we'll give it a transition of all to 0.4 seconds, and we'll also give it a border radius of 8 pixels, and we'll set the overflow to hidden, so that anything outside this options container will not be displayed. Now we'll style the option inside the select box, so we'll type select box dot option, and we'll have the same style for the selected division as well, so we'll type selected over here, and we'll give a padding of 12 pixels and 24 pixels, and we'll set the cursor to pointer, and we'll also set the cursor to pointer for the select box labels, so we'll type cursor pointer. Now when we hover over these options, we need to have a different background color, so we'll type select box option colon hover, and here we'll type background, and we'll set the background to 414B57. Now when we hover over this, we have a different color. Now let's hide these radio buttons, so here we will type select box option dot radio, and we'll set the display to none. Now we'll create an active class which we will add and remove using JavaScript. When the active class is added, we will have this options displayed, and when the active class is removed, we will have the maximum height of this to 0. So let's uncomment these 2 lines of code, and we'll go to the HTML, and for the options container we will also add a class called active, and in style.css we will create a new selector, and we will type select box options container dot active. So here you have to keep in mind that you shouldn't have any space in between, so this means that the element should have the options container class as well as the active class. So if the element has both of these classes, then whatever style we write over here will be applied. So we'll give a max height of 240 pixels, and we'll set the opacity to 1, and we also want it to be scrollable, so for that we will type overflow -y, and we'll set it to scroll. So now we have this scroll bar over here. This scroll bar doesn't look nice with our design, so let's go ahead and style that as well. So we'll type select box options container colon colon webkit dash scroll bar, and we'll give it a width of 8 pixels and a background color of 0D141F. And here we can see the scroll bar, but we also need to have a rounded corner. So for that we will give a border radius, and we'll set it to 0 for the top left, 8 pixels for the top right, and 8 pixels for the bottom right, and 0 for the bottom left. So here we have the rounded corners. Now we also need to style the thumb of our scroll bar, so we'll type options container colon colon WebKit scroll bar thumb, and for this we will give a background color of 525861, and we also need to add this same border radius over here. Alright, so now we have our scroll bar styled correctly. Now we can see the selected division over here, but if we go to the original design, we can see that it is placed separately. So for that we will need to go ahead and cut this from here and paste it outside the options container. And when we add and remove the active class from the options container, we want to make changes to this select division over here. So if you take a look at this icon, we can see that it changes the rotation value when we add and remove the active class from here. So for that we need to move this selected division after the options container. That is because in CSS we don't have a selector to select an element before some element. We can select elements after an element. So for that we'll just cut this from here and we'll paste it after the options container. Alright, so now here we can see that options container and selected are side by side. So we can fix that easily by just going over here and typing flex direction to column. Now we want this selected division to be above our options container. So we can do that using the order property in flexbox. So we'll go to the options container and here we will type order 1, and now we have the selected division above our options container. Now let's style the selected division. So for that we'll give a background color of 2F3640, and we'll also give it a border radius of 8 pixels and a margin bottom of 8 pixels, and the color of the text to F5, F6, FA, and we'll set the position to relative so that we can place our icon right here. And just to be sure, we'll also add an order of 0 over here so that our selected will always be before the options container. Now let's add our down arrow over here in the selected division. So for that we will use an after selector. So we'll type selected : after, and we'll set the content to blank, and for the background we'll set URL and we'll provide the URL of our SVG. Now we'll set the background size to contain, and we'll also set the background repeat to no repeat. Now let's position our down arrow. So we'll set the position to absolute, and we'll set the height to 100% and the width to 32 pixels. Now we'll set the right position to 10 pixels and the top to 5 pixels, and we'll also give a transition so that we will have a smooth animation. Now when we have the active class applied on our options container, we want this arrow to point up, and when we don't have the active class applied, then we'll have the arrow in the downward direction. So we'll just copy this code from here, and here we'll type plus dot selected : after. So what we're doing over here is that when we have this options container and this active class applied on a division, we'll be making some changes to the after of our selected division. We are having this plus over here because our selected division is after the options container. Alright, so here we will type transform, and we'll set the rotate X to 180 degrees, and we also need to change the top position. So we'll set it to -6 pixels. Alright, we have completed our styling. Now let's go to the index.html file and we will remove this active class from here, because initially we won't have this active class applied to this division. Now let's go to our JavaScript file and let's make this work. We need to access some elements from our page. So first of all we'll create some constants. So we'll type const selected, and we'll type document.querySelector dot selected. Then we'll type const options container, and we'll set that equal to document.querySelector options container. We also need to get the list of all the options, so we'll type const options list. You can name these constants anything you want, and here we'll type document.querySelector all, because we'll have multiple items. and we'll select all the divisions with a class of option. Now we'll write the code for adding and removing the active class. So we'll type selected dot add event listener, and we'll select the click event. So whenever someone clicks on the selected division, we want to execute the following code. So we will create an arrow function, and here we will type options container dot class list dot toggle active. Now what this does over here is that if the options container has a class of active, it will remove the active class, and if it doesn't have the class, then it will add it. So let's check whether it works. So now when we click on this division, we can see our options are displayed, and when we click on it again, it goes back. Now the last thing we need to do is whenever we select on any of these options, we want this text to be displayed over here, and we also want to remove the active class from the options container. So we need to add event listeners for all the options in our list. So we will use a for each loop. So we'll type options list dot for each, and here we need to have a callback function, and we also need to have an argument to reference the single elements. So for the argument, I'll just type O. So whenever we want to reference the single element, we will type O, and here in our function we will type O dot add event listener, click, and here we will create an arrow function, and here we will type selected dot inner HTML equals O dot query selector, and we'll select the label inside our option division, and we'll get the inner HTML of the label, and we'll store that inside the selected division. And then we also need to remove the active class from the options container. So we'll type options container dot class list dot remove active. Now what this function is doing over here is that it is looping through all the options inside our options list, and it is adding the click event listener to all the options, and whenever any of these options are clicked, it gets the value of the label inside the option, and it sets the value to the selected division, and then we remove the active class from the options container. Now let's test and see whether it works. So now when we click on the selected division, we can see our list is displayed over here, and let's select one of these options, and here we can see that music is displayed over here. So whenever we select any of these options, it is displayed on our selected division. Alright, so that's it for this video. If you have any doubts, you can ask in the comments below, and click on the like button if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe to this channel to get the latest video notifications. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a nice day.